Have you ever started playing a game and found yourself getting more and more obsessed with it? It doesn't happen to me very often, but Marvel's Midnight Suns has sunk its hooks into me, but good. And today I'm finally going to set it aside long enough to tell you about it. But as much as I'm enjoying it, I don't want to give the impression that there's nothing to criticize, so let's take a few minutes to cover
the good, the bad, the ugly
of Marvel's Midnight Suns. Most of the skepticism that I see in discussions about this game has centered around the combat and the cards that fuel it. Well, let me just tell you, I love this combat system. Yes, the cards mean that you don't have access to every ability on every turn, but you only have 24 cards in your entire deck, and you can cycle through roughly 5 to 7 every turn between the two free redraws and the fact that quite a few abilities allow you to draw more cards. So whatever ability you don't have in your hand this turn is coming, and it's probably coming soon. Using cards as a delivery system for your powers offers you a new puzzle to solve every turn. A big part of the challenge is because you can't count on always having the exact mix of abilities you would have chosen for yourself. But you'll be surprised what you can accomplish once you put your mind to it and start breaking down the actions you can still take on your turn. I'm not going to go too deep into the specifics of the combat system because I made a whole video laying out all of those details. But pulling deck building out of a 2D space and making it 3-dimensional has added a lot to the experience, and they've doubled down on that by adding opportunities to damage enemies using items on the battlefield without even needing to use cards. Another thing I find interesting is that I almost always start a mission feeling like I'm hopelessly outnumbered and underpowered, but generally manage to get things under control over the next few turns regardless. It ends up making me feel smarter than I probably deserve to, but I appreciate it nonetheless. And before I move on from combat, can I just give a quick shout out to the animations? I have played dozens and dozens of missions, and you would think I'd stop caring about them at some point. But I'm constantly struck by how lovingly crafted the animations are and how perfectly they capture the personalities of each hero. That's true not only when you're using your powers, but even when just simply moving from one spot to another on the battlefield. Watching Spider-Man, Captain America, Blade, and all the rest brought to life in this way, it's been an absolute joy. Now this part is a little tricky because when the writing is at its best, it's part of what makes Midnight Suns enjoyable. I've enjoyed the main storyline quite a bit. Some of the subplots and side quests also really hit home with me. But there are also times when the writing gets pretty repetitive. I found this particularly true when certain characters like Nico and Iron Man are extremely whiny for way too long. Here's a sample of Nico complaining about the Avengers not doing enough to rescue the Scarlet Witch, even though literally no one knows how to find her, let alone free her from Lilith. And I want you to remember, this is just one of many, many times you'll hear virtually the exact same thing from her.
What do you think? You don't think this whole Bruce Wanda thing is fair either, right?
Fair? What do you mean, Nico?
Oh, come on. You see the double standard too. I know you do. All they care about is losing Bruce. It's as if Wanda never existed. Now we all have to sit around and cuddle Stark through his grief. Who was there for us when Wanda was taken, huh? Where was our Kleenex and freaking group therapy?
Me, Nico. I was there for you.
Yeah, well, maybe being there for someone is not enough.
Then what is enough, Nico?
Action, that's what. You know, I bet if they had a shot at saving their precious Banner Boy, they wouldn't hesitate. How long has Wanda been gone? We've waited long enough for someone to take action. And action is just what I might take.
Other area where repetition got the best of me was in the relationship building conversations. Here again, some of them are enjoyable. In fact, here's a clip from one that I thought was fun and would have enjoyed seeing more like it.
I ordered weird candies. We should eat them.
What is weird candy?
Made from octopus, marbled with ginger shavings, and looks disgusting. Like a lump of clay you find in a gutter.
I have eaten some strange things in my life. This could not be any worse.
We shall see. Also, I bet Robbie you would throw up. If you do, I will post a picture to Superlink.
You what?
Shush, you are committed.
Now, unfortunately, conversations that I enjoyed as much as this one were pretty rare. Although I would say most of them were fine, and maybe a few were a little worse than fine, but that isn't what got to me. It's the fact that you kind of need a lot of your in-game time to be in these conversations. And the sheer repetition took a lot of that initial shine away. It's one thing to have one conversation where the two of you are telling each other how nice it is to have made a new friend or reassuring each other that you're both awesome. But the 20th time I had to watch that play out, I'm pretty much just wanting to click through it to get to the end. It essentially comes across like filler, as though they didn't have any ideas left to reveal anything meaningful about the characters, or something funny that could happen, or just anything that would be more interesting rather than a constant stream of empty mutual admiration. Here's an example of what I'm talking about.
Now look at me, hanging with the legendary Hunter and the Midnight Suns in their super secret Atlantic Ocean base.
We are happy to have you.
That's just it. What if that radioactive spider had decided to chomp down on someone else's behind? What would old non-arachnid me be?
A brave warrior and a cunning ally either way.
Not what the kids on the playground used to say. I was the equipment manager for TAG.
Peter, I am friends with you, not your powers.
Again, pretty harmless on its own, but in conjunction with the many other times you'll watch more or less the same thing play out, it gets a bit tedious. I know that the developers really wanted to let players live out the fantasy of making friends with heroes in the Marvel Universe, and I respect the obvious time and effort they put into it. That said, I would have found the game more enjoyable if the conversations were cut back by at least half. My guess is without the pressure to produce so much of this content, the quality of what would have ended up in the game would have probably been higher, and the game just might flow a little better. The only part of my experience in Midnight Suns that could be called ugly has been dealing with bugs. The worst of these was a crash that happened just as I was saving the game after a long session exploring the grounds around the Abbey, and I ended up losing all of that progress. It crashed one or two other times without any particular fallout, but it's still not a great addition to the experience. A more common issue that I encountered while exploring the grounds was that I would simply lose the ability to interact with objects in the environment. For example, there's resources you can gather, and I just wouldn't be able to click on them anymore. I did find that I could fix it by manually saving my game, but then after a while, it would just bug out on me again, and I would have to keep going through that cycle. Now, as these things go, I certainly wouldn't try to pretend that Midnight Suns has major issues with bugs, but the ones that I had did mar my experience, and I hope Firaxis take a page from Raid's book sooner rather than later.
Raid, Ant and Roach Killer. Kills bugs dead.
To put everything I've talked about into context, I've spent 60 hours in Midnight Suns, and I've enjoyed myself for the vast majority of that time. When I mentioned at the beginning that the game has sunk its hooks into me, I was not exaggerating. Real talk, I've continuously put off working on this video because I was constantly finding another excuse why I needed to play just one more mission. And then one more day, and then another, and so on. I've been losing myself in this world evening after evening, and even now, I just want to get back to playing more of it. As for those repetitious conversations, I did figure out how to minimize that effect without completely throwing friendships out the window. Even though the game allows us to play as many general missions as we want in between story missions, you'll be better off if you try to stick to no more than 2 or 3 of them before moving on to the next story mission. By pushing the story forward sooner, you'll play fewer game days, and that means fewer of those conversations. That should also keep them from getting quite so monotonous and also keep the game's pacing feeling more lively. At this point, I can only hope that I've shown you enough to help you figure out whether Midnight Suns will be anywhere near as enjoyable for you as it has been for me. And if you want a more detailed discussion on the game as a whole, or the combat specifically, then you just might find what you're looking for in the videos highlighted on screen now. Either way, that's all for now. Thanks for watching, and I hope we see you next time.